Hi, my name is Ricardo, and today we're going to be talking about the U.S.-China trade war and the implications that the 21st century has had for global trading. So the first topic that we're going to be talking about is going to be on the U.S. trade, U.S.-China trade war. Um, so this it all began back in 2018, back when the U.S. This whole emerged as a resolve long-standing trade imbalances, for property concerns, geopolitical tensions. We all know how the U.S.-China relationship has been in the past few years, and just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we saw how supposedly the U.S. detected a balloon that was flying around Mexican territory, and they were trying to come into Mexican territory to see what the balloon was about. So it's been a few years that this whole relationship between the U.S. and China has been really tense. Um, and what happened is that U.S. imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods and Chinese related kinds of products. Products that were basically made in China and came from China. So of course, this escalated the whole thing on the whole relationship trade-wise between the U.S. and China. Um, as we mentioned, the relationship between these two nations was really affected, and still is, and more about the things that are going in today's world, but we're not going to be talking about that today. So supposedly some negotiations, some agreements were reached between the U.S. and China. Um, that of course led to confidence in the market and in fluctuations between these three countries. Um, so this war had a lot of impact, technology-wise, industry-wise, manufacturing-wise, and agriculture-wise, because basically most of the products were imported from China because we all know it's really cheap, to um, basically any type of product made over there for technology, basically any industry than you can think of is really cheap over there, because what the workers are paid over there. So this really affected a lot of global change, not only in on the U.S. and China, but it also affected from countries that were supplying from China and that were also allies from the U.S., like Mexico, India, Vietnam. Um, but they were affected by this, but of course they were also um, it was a benefit for them because um, uh, most of those countries became alternatives to basically manufacturing destinations. It wasn't just only China. We're also, talking about Thailand, Vietnam, India, and basically a lot of countries were also brought into this conflict. Um, so this trade war, it's still going on in in the in today's world. It's not something that has stopped, and because of what's going on in today's world right now, it's not going to stop at all. With China basically being on Russia's side, the U.S. basically being on Ukraine's side. So. No, unfortunately, this is a war that is going to continue for a long time, and it's not only for who wants to be the number one world, number one country or the top economy in the world. When we all know that in the near future it's going to be China, it's not going to be the U.S. Anymore, because we're seeing how China is getting involved in more countries now and now. We see over here in Mexico how we see a lot of Chinese. Um, this Chinese source, where they sell basically everything that you need at a really cheap price. Of course, the quality is not the best, but it's something that we're seeing more and more in our country, and it's starting to become something really common. So we can see how China, it's getting integrated in a lot of countries. So that's basically a little bit about the China and U.S. trade war. Why it happened and how it is standing on today's world. So what we're going to be talking right now, it's going to be about the implications for global trading in the 21st century. So the implications that we have on today, and I think it became more of a problem in this past few years because of the whole pandemic situation. Um, and it has to do a lot about with the U.S. and China trade wars. This has something that has happened to me personally. I ordered some shoes and they were coming from Vietnam, and they were going to go through the U.S. and then come over here to Mexico, and they were held over at U.S. Customs just because it came from Vietnam. And I never got the shoes. I never got my money back. It's basically over there at the U.S. Customs, and I'm never going to see them. So it's something that it's really affecting us because something that we want to order from another country, it has to go through the U.S. basically because we are the allies, and since it's something that they consider to be how can I say this? It's something that they consider as dangerous just because it comes from Vietnam, Thailand, China, or even India. It's something that they might consider dangerous just because it comes from those countries. So it's something that's it's really affecting us, and it's making us how can I say this a little bit more clear? Making us consume more products from the U.S. than we could from China. And that's the reason why more Chinese people are coming to Mexico and putting these stores that are really cheap because there's no other way that we can put them. We can buy stuff from China. So it's something that is really affecting us in the 21st century, and more with the whole COVID thing that it supposedly came from Wuhan on this laboratory, and of course China was impacted, and it's still suffering from from that impact that they got in 2020. They're pretty much banned from a lot of global agreements. The whole tourism, it's really affecting China, and a lot of things were affected because of the whole U.S.-China trade war. I mean, it's two of the biggest economies in the whole world, and as I mentioned before, we all know that China is going to become a first world country. Well, it's already a first world country, but the first power of economy in the world. So to countries like Mexico and basically all of Latin America and North America were affected by this. And unfortunately, it's something it's not going to stop, anytime soon. So that was a little bit about the whole U.S. Trade war with China, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for your attention.